Hey, what's up, guys? It's Ritchie from Boston. It's the 10th, it's August, it's 2021, and, excuse me, it's early. This video right here is, I was talking about the shape of the earth the other day, and people gave me a whole big hard time. Well, maybe you didn't know this, but let's look at the government documents, the Freedom of Information Act things that came out 50 years later. The earth isn't round. We're not in outer space. We're not going around the sun. None of that's real. And I was the first one to call Flat Earth out as total bullshit, that it didn't make any difference, it didn't matter, blah, blah, blah. It does matter. Because the shape of the earth and the lie that they're perpetrating through NASA is to simply and only take you away from God. And right now, you need to be as close to God as you possibly can. You've been warned. At any rate, listen to this, because here's all the proof you need, and people will still watch this and not believe it because they don't want to. It's easier. Check this out.
Okay, so in the 1930s, we had both Auguste Piccard and the Russians sending up high-altitude balloons, and they're looking out, and they're not able to detect curvature. So we go forward about a decade to the 1940s, 1948. This is an official CIA, look up here, CIA.gov, okay, CIA declassified document from the Russians. I'm going to pull it up here in Adobe Acrobat.
And just real quick, here's all the links. CIA.gov, CIA.gov, NASA.gov, NASA, United States Army, the Army, NASA, the Army, the Army, the Army, the Army, okay? So all those links will be pinned below. This isn't just nonsense that he's pulling off some stupid website on the internet. I know a lot of people that break my ball. Oh, would you find that out on the internet? Well, yeah, MIT is on the internet. Harvard University is on the internet. The Gates Foundation is on the internet. So yeah, I did find it on the internet. But this is important stuff because they've covered this up my entire life. Back to this.
It's a little easier because I've already highlighted some stuff here. Same document. All right, so the subject is Earth measurements, 1948, Moscow, Russia. Outer gravitational field and shape of the physical surface of the Earth. They're trying to figure out the shape of the Earth? Wait a minute. I thought we knew the shape of the Earth since Pythagoras and Eratosthenes, right? Well, apparently the Russians didn't get the memo. A study is made of the coordinates necessary for the solvability and uniqueness of solution of an integral equation by the aid of which the outer gravitational field and the shape of the physical surface of the Earth may be determined. So we go through this document a little bit here. It says the methods of studying the shape of the Earth. So this is what their goal is here. They're outlining some of that. The shape of the physical surface of the Earth can be determined with sufficient reliability on the basis only of data obtained from exact measurements. Well, that goes without saying, I suppose. And let's keep going down here. Let's see. We can regard the potential of the real Earth, by this equation here, apparently, as known correct to an additive constant, whatever that is, at all points of the physical surface of the Earth and only on the surface, whereas it is not determinable at all other points of space without knowledge of the shape of the Earth. So they're still trying to figure out the shape of the Earth here. But since the shape of the Earth is not known, the shape of the Earth is not known, 1948, the true coordinates of these points, B, L, and H, are unknown to us. So the Russians are having trouble figuring out the shape of the Earth in 1948. Let's look at another document here. Another declassified CIA document up here, right? They're checking out the firmament in this one. Let's go back to Acrobat. 1953 now. Geophysics light scattering, USSR. Trying to figure out how does light work in the atmosphere here. So we get down to page 19 here. It says dissertations defended in the Scientific Council of the Institute of Physics of the Earth, Institute of Physics of the Atmosphere, and Institute of Applied Geophysics, USSR, 1957. March 1957. Let's say March 23, 1957, apparently. The dissertation represents the result of many years of study of the clear daytime sky. The observations were carried out in 12 locations at various altitudes above the sea, various climatic, meteorological, and synoptic conditions. The observations were carried out mainly during high transparency of the atmosphere in the visual range of the spectrum in the absence of a snow cover. In the investigations, 2 instruments designed by V.G. Fezenkov were used. One of these was a visual photometer of the daytime sky intended for measuring the brightness of the firmament. Interesting. Trying to figure out the brightness of the firmament. Again, 1957. The dissertation contains a certain formula of the brightness of the sky, taking into consideration only the brightness of the first order, and derived, get this now, on the assumption of a flat Earth, and giving some conclusions derived on the basis of this formula. So the Russians are trying to check out the firmament based on assumptions of a flat Earth in 1957? Very interesting, huh? All right, let's see what NASA has to say. Looking at this ntrs.nasa.gov document here, dated April 17th, 1961. Go back to Acrobat, looking at this document from 1961. And it says, a trajectory simulation incorporating the above requirements is represented in Figure 8. In addition to the above requirements, this simulation assumes a vehicle with 6 degrees of freedom and aerodynamic symmetry in roll, and the missile position in space is computed relative to a flat, non-rotating Earth. So they're checking out missile position in space computed relative to a flat, non-rotating Earth. Why would you do that? If the Earth is a rotating ball, 25,000 miles in circumference, why would you do your computations based on a non-rotating flat Earth? You're going to tell me that this simplifies the math? I mean, we are actually dealing with rocket scientists here, so math's not a problem for these people. All right, let's see what else we can find. That was April 1961. This is nasa.gov again, June 1971. So let's look at that one. June 1971, a method for reducing the sensitivity of optimal nonlinear systems to parameter uncertainty. Whatever that means. And we get down to about page 12 here. And it says, a numerical example problem statement. The example problem is a fixed time problem in which it is required to determine the thrust attitude program of a single stage rocket vehicle starting from rest and going to specified thermal conditions of altitude and vertical velocity, which will maximize the final horizontal velocity. The idealizing assumptions made are the following. Number 1, a point mass vehicle. Number 2, of the idealized assumptions that are being made for this example is a flat, non-rotating Earth. NASA making idealized assumptions based on a flat, non-rotating Earth? What's going on here? Let's continue. Here we have another nasa.gov document dated March 1972. March 1972, NASA Technical Memorandum, determination of angles of attack and side slip from radar data and a roll stabilized platform. Gotta love the titles, huh? Okay, abstract. Equations for angles of attack and side slip relative to both a rolling and non-rolling body access system are derived for a flight vehicle for which radar and gyroscopic attitude data are available. The method is limited, however, to application where a flat, non-rotating Earth may be assumed. All right, let's continue. That was 1972, the end of the, or right around the end of the Apollo program. So we go to NASA, again, nasa.gov, December 1978. Investigation of aircraft landing in variable wind fields. Equations of motion. This comes up a lot. The two-dimensional model for aircraft motion presented in this section follows the general form developed by Frost. It accounts for both vertical and horizontal mean wind components having both time and spatial variations. The aircraft trajectory model employed in this study was derived based on the following assumptions. Number 1, the Earth is flat and not rotating. That's the number 1 assumption? So we're going to see this over and over and over again regarding the equations of motion. They're always using it on a flat, non-rotating Earth model, which doesn't make sense if you're developing aircraft and missiles and things like that to go over a rotating ball. Why would you start off with the assumption of a non-rotating flat Earth if the real-world application is over a spinning ball? 1987 NASA technical paper, 2768, User's Manual for Linear, a Fortran program to derive linear aircraft models. Look at that in Acrobat here, same document. And we'll scroll down to, I believe it was page 12 again. Program overview. Within the program, the nonlinear equations of motion include 12 states representing a rigid aircraft flying in a stationary atmosphere over a flat, non-rotating Earth. More diagrams, more equations. The nonlinear equations of motion used in the linearization program are general 6 degree of freedom equations representing the flight dynamics of a rigid aircraft flying in a stationary atmosphere over a flat, non-rotating Earth. Let's continue. That was 1987. NASA.gov, May 1988. Flight testing. Flight testing a V-STOL aircraft to identify a full envelope aerodynamic model. June 27, 1988. Day after my birthday. Page 4 of their document. For aircraft problems, the state of measurement models together represent the kinematics of a rigid body for describing motion over a flat, non-rotating Earth. All right. NASA.gov, December 1991. Aircraft model for the AIAA Controls Design Challenge. On page 11. Once again, you have the equations of motion and atmospheric model. The nonlinear equations of motion used in this model are general 6 degree of freedom equations representing the flight dynamics of a rigid aircraft flying in a stationary atmosphere over a flat, non-rotating Earth. You guys start to see a pattern here? NASA.gov, June 1997. Talking about the SR-71. Predicted performance of a thrust-enhanced SR-71 aircraft with an external payload. One of my favorite aircraft of all time. That's just a cool-looking airplane, huh? Let's see what they have to say about a back-mounted hypersonic research vehicle sitting on top of the SR-71. That's pretty crazy. Pretty cool interior shot right here. And on page 8, digital performance simulation description. The digital performance simulation equations of motion use 4 assumptions that simplify the program while maintaining its fidelity for most maneuvers and applications. Number 1, point mass modeling. 2, non-turbulent atmosphere. 3, zero side forces. And 4, a non-rotating Earth. Now, they don't specify flat here, but they're saying the Earth's not rotating as part of their 4 assumptions that simplify the program while maintaining its fidelity. So they're discrediting the rotating Earth right here. At least by that statement, it would appear. Moving right along. We come to another NASA document. I wasn't able to figure out what year this was from, but it's definitely a NASA document here. I'm guessing sometime around 1997, or sometime shortly thereafter, as the footnotes indicate anyway. There are footnotes that go to 1997. They don't go any later than that. Singular arc optimal control. Our minimum time to climb problem. In our minimum time to climb problem, the aircraft is modeled as a point mass, and the flight trajectory is strictly confined in a vertical plane on a non-rotating flat Earth. And we'll just fast forward to the end here. See, that's the dates there. The latest one is 1997, so that's where I came to that conclusion. 2000, Army Research Laboratory. This is arl.army.mil document here. Path loss measurements in a forested environment at VHF. Let's check that one out. Under data analysis on page 10 of their document here, multipath data. In this section, we discuss the data for the measurements described in section 2.2, figure 9, plots the transmission loss as a function of transmit antenna height for 145, 223, 300, 435, and 910 megahertz, respectively. The receive antenna height was 2.7 meters, and the range was 410 meters for all frequencies except 435 megahertz, where the receive height was 3.6 meters and the range was 200 meters. The expected transmission loss in decibels over a flat Earth is given by the following equation. We get down to page 14 here. HH propagation through the woods. In taking the HH polarization propagation data through woods, both in winter and summer, we observed local fluctuations up to 20 decibels. We avoided these large dips in receive power by minor repositioning of the receive antenna. It is important to note, however, that the multipath from the local trees and brush can cause such variations. After the data were inspected, it became apparent that they tended to agree with the theory given by equation 2 plus some fixed attenuation, and therefore allowed us to develop an analytical expression based on flat Earth theory. I'll read that again. Therefore allowed us to develop an analytical expression based on flat Earth theory. So everybody who wants to label us flat earthers crazy must have to lump in the Army Research Laboratory as part of the Looney Tune bin. Let's see what else they have to say. Propagation of electromagnetic fields over the flat Earth. What? Army Research Laboratory, arl.army.mil, by Joseph R. Melita, February 2001. Propagation of electromagnetic fields over flat Earth. You guys seeing that? Check it out. There it is again. In the table of contents, figures 6 and 7, comparison of principal fields from an ideal dipole-oriented perpendicular and horizontal to a homogeneous flat Earth. Figure 7, comparison of principal fields from an ideal dipole-oriented perpendicular and horizontal to a homogeneous flat Earth. There are the two figures, figure 6, figure 7, over flat Earth. Army Research Laboratory. Back to NASA. NASA.gov. June 2002. Stability and control estimation flight test results for the SR-71 aircraft with externally mounted experiments. So we're back to checking out some things on the SR-71. And we get to page 9. Methods of analysis, parameter identification formula. Go through some formulas right here. And it says equations of motion. We come back to that. Once again, these equations assume a rigid vehicle and a flat, non-rotating Earth. For the SR-71 with external hardware attached. Back to the Army Research Laboratory, August 2002. Automatic target acquisition of the Demo 3 program. Demo 3 program, Army Research Laboratory. The detection algorithm. The algorithm described in this report was designed to address a need for a detection algorithm with wide applicability, which would serve as a pre-screener/detector for a number of applications. While most automatic target detection/recognition algorithms use much problem-specific knowledge to improve performance, the result is an algorithm that is tailored to specific target types and poses. The approximate range to target is often required, with varying amounts of tolerance. For example, in some scenarios, it is assumed that the range is known to within a meter from a laser range finder or a digital map. In other scenarios, only the range to the center of the field of view and the depression angle is known, so that a flat Earth approximation provides the best estimate. Alrighty then. January 2003, back to the Army Research Laboratory. See, arl.army.mil. January 2003. Scrolling down to the report document page, talking about the scanning fast field program, and I guess the various models. The geometry profile is required because of the angular dependence of the sound speed on the wind direction relative to the direction of propagation. This model works over a flat Earth and non-turbulent atmosphere. Wonder how it works in a turbulent atmosphere over a spinning ball. Okay, September 2009, Army Research Laboratory. Computationally efficient algorithms for estimating the angle of arrival of helicopters using acoustic arrays. And on page 22, the estimated phases of the reflection coefficients have a dependency on range. This may be caused by a violation of the assumption of the flat Earth model. So you're having some discrepancies when you violate the assumption of a flat Earth model? And let's see, one last one. From the Army Research Laboratory, March 2010. Projectile field dynamics, page 1. The 6-DOF rigid projectile model is employed to predict the dynamics of a projectile in flight. These equations assume a flat Earth. Why would you project flight dynamics over an assumed flat Earth if in reality we are dealing with a spinning ball? It seems to me that the Army Research Laboratory and NASA and the Russians and the CIA have been talking about flat Earth long before any of us showed up. Kind of makes you wonder, what do they know?
So there you have it. There you have it. There's all CIA, NASA, and government documentation going back forever. And here's the deal. This was a huge story before Kennedy finally said,
"We meet in an hour of change and challenge, in a decade of hope and fear, in an age of both knowledge and ignorance. The greater our knowledge increases, the greater our ignorance unfolds. No man can fully grasp how far and how fast we have come. But condense, if you will, the 50,000 years of man's recorded history in a time span of but a half a century. Stated in these terms, we know very little about the first 40 years, except at the end of them, advanced man had learned to use the skins of animals to cover them. Then about 10 years ago, under this standard, man emerged from his caves to construct other kinds of shelter. Only 5 years ago, man learned to write and use a cart with wheels. Christianity began less than 2 years ago. The printing press came this year. And then less than 2 months ago, during this whole 50-year span of human history, the steam engine provided a new source of power. Newton explored the meaning of gravity. Last month, electric lights and telephones and automobiles and airplanes became available. Only last week did we develop penicillin and television and nuclear power. This is a breathtaking pace, and such a pace cannot help but create new ills as it dispels old. So it is not surprising that some would have us stay where we are a little longer, to rest, to wait. If this capsule history of our progress teaches us anything, it is that man in his quest for knowledge and progress is determined and cannot be deterred. We shall send to the moon, 240,000 miles away, a giant rocket more than 300 feet tall on an untried mission to an unknown celestial body, and then return it safely to Earth. But why, some say, the moon? Why choose this as our goal? And they may well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why 35 years ago fly the Atlantic? We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone. And therefore, as we set sail, we ask God's blessing on the most hazardous and dangerous and greatest adventure on which man has ever embarked.
Now that's a great speech, right? That's a great speech. And he gave that speech in 1961. And yet, this was a huge story right here that kind of went away. It's amazing I still found this on YouTube.
Well, now, one thing, you have a theory about the moon, and we expect to be able to get observable facts about the moon fairly soon. What is your theory?
Well, it is by now rather more than a theory. 10 or 11 years ago, I stated to various scientists that the moon is not a piece of rock, but it is a plasma phenomenon, cosmic plasma, and that this fact will eventually be confirmed. I made certain predictions which were already confirmed in 1958, and the situation now is coming close to a complete confirmation.
What will be the result if you're proved to be correct in your theories?
The result will be profound and decisive, because it will give proof that a complete reinvestigation of the laws of nature is necessary. Because if the moon is a plasma, no man will ever land on it. The soft landing attempts will all fail. That means that the mass of the moon is less, far less, than is currently assumed. It's in a different state of energy, and it has far less mass. That means there is no more explanation for the tides. If the moon, for example, had only 1,000th part of its current mass, then the tides would only be 2 inches high under conventional theories instead of sometimes 14 feet. And that means that if it is proved that the moon is a plasma, then all gravitational theories are out, and a new concept of the cosmos and of its laws has to be evolved.
Aren't you being a bit adventurous, though, because you know we're going to be able to test out your theories on the moon fairly soon?
Well, not anymore. 11 years ago, of course, it was rather taking a risk. I was considered a lunatic, of course. Taking a risk, I was considered a lunatic, of course. But by now, the evidence, accumulated evidence, is already so much in my favor that I'm not taking any risks anymore. On the contrary, there is scientific views expressed all over the world now that the moon seems to be of a quite different nature of what was assumed.
But the Americans and Russians are thinking of landing men on it.
Well, that will never happen. Not on the moon. On Mars, on Venus, on other planets, yes. But the moon is definitely, as I assert, a plasma.
So everything points to they did not land on the moon, because they don't go back to the moon. If they could have landed on the moon, they'd be back to the moon all the time. But they can't. I've taken videos of the sun setting all over the United States, but specifically on places like the Pacific Ocean, over the mountains, and you can simply see the sun's not going over any curve. The sun's moving away and just getting smaller and smaller and smaller because it's very close. And its reflection on the ocean right there should show that to you, but people don't listen, they don't believe. You can show them all the paperwork in the world, from NASA, from the CIA, right from the horse's mouth, and they still don't believe it. The reason they're doing this enormous lie is it's just like the weapons of mass destruction. It's just like with the pandemic. It's just like with 9/11. It's just like with Sandy Hook. It's just like with everything else. They just keep repeating it over and over and over. Look where we're at right now. It's August of 2021. They've pulled this thing off since March of 2020, and they just won't stop with it. And people just finally, if they hear it enough times, they believe it to be true. They're lying to you about the shape of the earth because that changes everything. If you believe the world is round and we're floating in, we're standing on the earth, the biggest thing we know, and it's just floating in outer space, going 666,000 miles an hour, revolving around the sun, this, that, and the other thing. The earth isn't moving. The earth is not moving at all. And it took me a long time to come to that conclusion. And I'll tell you what, the reason they're hiding it is because they don't want you to know that God created you in His image and that you are special. Period. Science is just the biggest religion ever. And science has the media to force everything right down your throat. Ritchie from Boston. Links will be below. I'm out.